All righty. Well, welcome everyone. I really appreciate everyone joining us for our presentation today in terms of becoming a health steward, making a difference. And this is unlike most of my presentations, which are informational and things of that nature. Today, my presentation is a call to action. And for our agenda, before we get to that, I want to tell you that I had a interesting conversation with my son yesterday, and he was like, Mom, but you need to be neutral. And I'm here to tell you that I am biased. I make no apologies. I'm not in the conversion business. I'm not here to try and persuade you according to whatever. I'm really here to speak to your heart because everything that I do from I can remember being conscious of being a person who does things. I've always been about our children. In fact, that was the title of my first book, Mommy, Birthing the Goddess from Within for Our Children's Sake. And I make no apologies for that. Everything in my life is determined by the question, how will this impact our children, our present children, and our future children? And what I say to people is that I'm the Harriet Tubman of the Health Freedom Underground Railroad. I take no prisoners. I don't know how many of you know the story of Harriet Tubman that led people to freedom along the Underground Railroad, but she was a tough mama. You know, if somebody was along the
Mhm.
trail and they're like, "Well, Harriet, I don't know. I'm tired." Harriet was like, "Ch-ch." She had a rifle. She's like, "Look, you going, okay?" And so that's how I am. And the reason why I'm that way is because we have gotten to a point in our nation, in our world, where those of us who are adults, we need to put on our big girl panties or big boy briefs or however you want to call it and roll up our sleeves and get to work. Our children cannot wait for us to go through all kinds of wishy-washy. Oh my, I'm so sad. No, the time for that is over. We've got to see what's happening, and I'm breaking up already. Okay, let me just go ahead and start. So our agenda for today is I'm first going to talk about why. Why do I think it's important for you guys to join us, to join our team, to join Dr. Carter, Dr. Lewis, Dr. Harshfield, Dr. Steve, all of us, why I am making this invitation, this call to action. And it's going to be talking about the state of our union. Then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what is a health steward and how it differs from what you guys are probably familiar with in terms of the terminology of health coaching. Then we're going to talk about who is this for? And I'm going to say it's for you because we need you. There's nothing that we can do in terms of really making a difference in this world, really moving the needle when it comes to the health freedom in this country and in the world without you. And I'm going to propose to you that the when and where is yesterday and here. And then I'll tell you a little bit about how you can move forward. So let's get this party started. And the first thing I want to implore you or suggest to you is to consider, do you know the state of our union? Do you really know what's happening in our world? Do you realize that childhood obesity is on the rise? You know, 74% of adults in our nation right now are overweight or obese. Nearly 50% of our children are overweight or obese. And I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, it was like one kid in the class that was kind of pudgy, and that was about it. And not that many adults were overweight. But now when you just sit down and observe, go anywhere, go to Walmart, go to the trains, go on a bus, go anywhere. And it is just horrific to take note how many of our children are overweight and obese. And I'm going to be emphasizing the statistics with our children because I've gotten to the point, ladies and gents, where I'm like, look, if you grown and you want to do certain things with yourself, hey, have at it. But please, 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 if you care anything about our children, please take note to what I'm saying, because whatever happens with our children is a reflection of what happens in our own lives. I'm not a person who says, oh, we need to tell our kids what to do. What I'm going to stress in our presentation today is that the buck stops with us. If I have an obese child, if I have an overweight child, I need to look at myself in the mirror. I don't need to look at the kid. I need to look at myself. And so, as a nation, we need to look at ourselves as it pertains to all of these various statistics that I'm going to share with you. Because obesity is a significant health risk. It's not just, I'm not here to be in the business of fat shaming. It's not about that at all. When I see somebody who's overweight or obese, the reason why I'm concerned about that person is not because I'm like, oh, well, you need to look like a toothpick. I don't have any such preconceptions. I am concerned about the health risks because I know that as your weight increases, your health risks increase in addition to that. You become more at risk for practically every form of disease that we know of. When we think about what was happening during the COVID era, which in some ways hasn't ended, let's be clear, the significant risk population were the people who were overweight. But they weren't being told that. In fact, we were being told, hey, sit down in front of your TV, lock yourself in your house, put on a mask, eat, take out, order in, and just wait for the virus to go away. That was the worst thing that we could have told people. And so now we have a situation where it's an urgent situation, even more so than it was before. And I've been ringing this bell from long before COVID. I've been talking about the real health crisis in our world, which is chronic illness. It's not about the occasional virus or bacteria that floats through the population. The real health crisis in our world, and in this nation in particular, is chronic illness. And obesity is at the tip of that particular pyramid. The other thing that many people don't realize is that not only is diabetes on the rise in adults, but in reality, the fastest growing diabetic population is our children. I remember when my children were growing up, I decided one day to test my kids because even though they don't get junk food in the house, they had started to go to public school, so they were out of my sphere of influence and they were being influenced by all of their teenage friends. And I was curious, I was like, oh, you know what, let me go ahead and test my kids. And when I tested my kids, we found out that their A1C was out of the optimal range. And when I shared that data with them, that is what inspired them to start to make certain changes in their health. But the reality is that most parents are not like me. In fact, most doctors are not like me, medical doctors, because we think, oh, they're kids, no big whoop-de-da. When is the last time, if you are a parent or if you're a grandparent, when is the last time that you've seen a doctor test the fasting glucose levels and the A1C levels of small children? Most of them don't, because they don't even think that this is the group to be concerned with. And yet, this is exactly the group that needs to be concerned with. And the beauty of everything that I'm sharing with you today is that it's easily changeable in terms of little steps that we can take to shift the needle and create significant change in the lives of our children and hence the world. Another thing to consider is the alarming trend of what we refer to as fatty liver disease. Back in the day, and unfortunately that day isn't so far in the past, say 20, 30 years ago, fatty liver disease was practically unheard of in our children. In fact, fatty liver disease was synonymous with alcoholics. But now the prevalence of fatty liver disease is more so non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And again, this is something just like the obesity, just like the ordinary diabetes. It was practically unheard of. Pediatricians rarely saw a child that was diabetic. And usually when they saw a child that was diabetic, it was a type 1 diabetes. Everything has shifted in the past 2 or 3 decades. And if unchecked, this would lead to serious, serious complications for a child. And then, of course, we have the rise in the cancer epidemic. The rates are skyrocketing. Adult cancers, or should I say, this should actually say childhood cancers, have increased by 79%. And I have to admit that at first I was like, oh, that's just a rare case, you know. But in the past 5 years, I've had 2 of my friends have their children diagnosed with cancer. And one of those friends, a very dear colleague of mine, a fellow teacher, his daughter actually died. He had gone through all of the surgery with the daughter to remove the cancerous ligaments. And in her case, they actually removed the limb that they said was too far gone with regards to the cancer. And they thought, oh, they're out of the hazard area, right? Because they were told, oh, she's cancer free now. And I remember when I first heard from him about this, I said, you need to start doing certain things proactively. Even though you've gone through the surgery and you've gone through the chemo and the radiation. But guess what? He went to his doctors and the doctor said, oh, diet is no big deal. No big deal at all. You know, she's perfectly fine now. And in a couple of years, the cancer came back and his child died. And then he reached out to me and he said, Michelle, if only I had listened to you, perhaps my daughter would be here with me right now. So I share that with you, ladies and gents, because again, I want you to look into the eyes of these children. As I said, I've gotten to the point where if an adult wants to do certain things, hey, go for it, go for it. You know, God gives us free will. But I really believe at this point in time that a lot of what's happening in this world is synonymous with child abuse. There's so many things that we could do to prevent what is happening to our children. But it starts with us. It really starts with us. And then now we see a recent significant upsurge in mental health illness. And again, I want to caution you because it's not simply about quote unquote the pandemic. This increase was going up, 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 up long before the pandemic. The pandemic simply put a magnifying glass on this particular situation. And now it kind of gave it steroids. Okay. But the fundamental precursors were there in place long before 2020. 25% of our women are on antidepressants. And 40% of our children, 40% of our 18-year-olds are diagnosed with a mental health illness. And I caution you because what's coming down the pipeline is that they recently went through Congress and they've authorized these health clinics that are going to be embedded in all of our schools, where they're going to be doing these screenings. And I guarantee you that in another 5 years, this number is going to significantly increase because more and more of our children are going to be labeled with a mental health illness. And I'm not minimizing the reality of what's happening to our children mentally and emotionally. What I'm saying is that instead of labeling it something that is going to be able to be given a prescription, which is exactly what this is about. Do not get it twisted. It is not as if these people all of a sudden grew a conscience. Really and truly, what's driving this is the pharmaceutical industry. Because as soon as they can label our children with something, that starts the cash flow. And so instead of looking at truly helping our children to heal, and in my estimation, I'm saying, forget the quote unquote aspect of healing. Let us prevent the diabetes. Let us prevent the obesity. Let us prevent the cancers. Let us prevent the mental health illnesses. And you don't prevent health with medication. And because you can't prevent health with medication, you can't make money off of keeping people healthy. So, that being said, the last thing that I want us to think about is the maternal mortality in the United States. And this to me is a summary slide, because in spite of the fact that we spend twice as much money on infant and maternal care than any other developed nation, we have the highest infant and maternal mortality rate in the developed world. You have a higher risk of death in giving birth in the United States than in other developed nations. So the question becomes, why is that? Why is it that we are spending more money than everybody else and we have worse outcomes? And the reason is because we are spending money after the fact. Unlike other nations where a significant amount of their health budget is spent on prevention, on keeping people healthy, keeping people out of the drug cartel, we choose to spend our money promoting the drug cartel, incentivizing the drug cartel. And that is why all of you here, when we look at the autism rates, as Dr. Carter just shared with us, because he went to the recent conference, they are through the roof. And they want to tell you, oh, well, it's because of genetics, or it's because of changing how we screen for autism. Don't be fooled. It has nothing to do with genetics. It has nothing to do with changes in the screening methodology. You cannot validate or justify this type of increase in terms of going from 1 in 1,500 in 2000, less than 25 years ago, to now the rate is 1 in 36. That is not genetics, ladies and gents. No way is that genetics. And no way is that simply a matter of redefining what autism is.
And it used to be 1 in 10,000 when I was in med school.
Whoa. So you see, ladies, I want you to think about, and I can come up with hundreds of statistics. These are just some that I thought were most glaring that would catch your attention. So I hope that you understand with me today, or you will agree with me today, that we need to do something. We need to get off our couches. We need to stop yabbering. We need to stop talking about this and create action. Because as my mama always says, you are either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. So, with that being said, I want to invite you to consider joining our team to become part of the solution and becoming what we refer to as the health stewards. Now, to be clear, health stewards are a step beyond being a health coach, because a health coach is primarily concerned on a specific health goal. So usually someone will come to a health coach and say, you know what, I need help in losing weight, or I need help in lowering my blood glucose. And so that is the realm of a health coach, where you have a specific goal that you enter into a contract with that other person to help them to achieve that specific goal. And a health coach is focused primarily on individual outcomes. Our health steward is a step beyond that. Our health steward is looking at a holistic perspective, not looking at simply, quote unquote, the problem, but looking at the whole person and looking at how do I not only give people guidance, but how do I empower them to basically not need me anymore. What I tell people all the time is when I work with you, my goal is for you to say, Michelle, good, I got it, don't need you. Bye, delete that app. And that's very different from our medical paradigm. Our medical paradigm is we want you to keep coming back over and over and over and over again, because we want you to believe that you absolutely need us 100%, and you can't do anything. You can't make any choices for your life without us, the wonderful, phenomenal experts that know everything. And our health steward is in there to bust up that particular paradigm and say, you know what? Guess what? There's a new doctor in town, and the new doctor is you. You are your best doctor. You are the person that we need to empower with the education, the tools, the strategies, so that not only do you have the ability to transform your own health, but you also have the ability, the courage, the audacity to go out there and transform the health of many, many, many people in your community, starting with your own family, then going to your friends and your coworkers. And when you get those cojones to say, you know what, I'm going to go up and shout it from the mountaintop because I am that sure of myself. So our health stewards are in the business of not only helping you with your individual health goals, but helping you to have a holistic perspective and understanding of health, to be empowered, to be able to have an impact in our communities, because that is what's driving this whole movement of creating a group of health stewards that we seek to multiply over and over and over again, not only here in the United States, but abroad, ultimately. And so it's founded on the principle where I think that I can speak in confidence in saying that Dr. Carter, Dr. Harshfield, Dr. Lewis, all of us need you. All of us recognize that really and truly, the heavy lifting is done by people that we refer to as the health stewards. And so the way this program is structured is that it is a year-long mentorship. And I say mentorship because you become part of our family. You're not a business model. You're a community model. The first 6 months is going to be basically intensive educational sessions. And then we're going to be focusing on the process of disease creation. How does disease come into being in the first place? And subsequently, how do you reverse that through the healing process? The second 6 months is going to be focusing on practical applications in your own life and then in coaching techniques. So you're going to learn to not only apply to your own life, but you're going to learn how to be able to effectively help others to do so. And that's where the coaching aspect comes in, because a lot of times we have individuals that have information, they have knowledge, but they're not effective at communicating that, and they're not effective at motivating other people to change. Because what I share with you is this: when somebody goes into Mickey D's, it is very unlikely that that person actually thinks that Mickey D's is a health food. Call me crazy. Call me crazy. But I don't think anybody is walking into Mickey D's thinking that this is a health food, right? And yet, that is what we're doing. So the question is not simply a matter of people not having information. What I'm proposing to you is that the question is, how do we motivate people? How do we support people to not only create the changes in their lives, but sustain those changes? Because I'm sure a lot of you probably have experienced personally or with your family members or friends who people who, the beginning of the year, they get the gym membership, they go to the gym for, a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months if you're good, and then it kind of like peters off. Or, you start off
Mhm.
with that healthy plan and you're like, yes, I'm going to lose the weight. I'm going to do such and such. And then it kind of goes off in the wayside. So a big part of who we are as health stewards is not only having the understanding of why things work, but also having the compassion and having the skills and the insight to be able to connect with individuals, to help them to create that change for themselves and for the ones that they love. So the big thing that we emphasize in this process is that health is a journey. Subsequently, in the training program, the first thing that we're going to be addressing is creating a paradigm shift for you to truly have an understanding of what is health and why is it that people in our nation are not healing? Why is it that we have so much chronic illness? Describing the problem is one thing. Understanding the why and the how behind it is completely different. So that is where we start our journey. And that's why we call this heal thyself, where you start to have that understanding that only you can heal yourself. I don't care what the alphabet soup is after a person's name in terms of credentials. It makes no difference because at the end of the day, there's a difference between treatment and healing. Treatment is for the acute condition, the acute crisis. But when it comes to healing, when it becomes to becoming whole, that is something that only you can do for yourself. The next part of our training is going to talk about various types of assessments. So we're going to talk about lab work in terms of blood work assessments, how to look at lab work and understand the main biomarkers, and how to communicate that information to others, how to understand what these biomarkers mean, what is the significance, why is it so important to understand the optimal ranges, and to also understand the mechanisms that create those specific types of ranges. And then the next part of our journey is to go through what we refer to as the foundational pillars. This is the non-sexy part of things because people like to think about the sexy stuff like, oh, let's talk about the thyroid and let's talk about the adrenals and let's talk about the detoxification pathways and blah, 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 blah. But I'm here to tell you, the majority of illness that we see in our world today, not counting infectious diseases, but the majority of the illness that we see with regards to chronic illness is based on what we refer to as the foundational pillars, based on things like being in alignment with the rhythms of our world, waking up at a certain time, going to bed at a certain time, exposure to the sunlight, breathing, breath work. We're going to be talking a lot about breath work, and I'll be teaching a lot of different breathing techniques that accomplish different types of shifts in the body. Movement, your perception of who you are with regards to your purpose and how you are in alignment with the divine. Many, many things, your sleep habits, your food consumption. All of these things form what we refer to as the foundational pillars. And these are the things that you are going to be able to help others to shore up their foundation. Because we cannot talk about building a house until we are sure that the foundation is set. So Dr. Harshfield has talked to you a lot of times about, sometimes people come into his clinic and the first thing he does is he sends them over to Dr. Lewis to see, okay, have the foundations been put in place? There's no point for me to get out the big guns if a big part of the problem is that you're dehydrated. Because no matter what, if you are dehydrated and Dr. Lewis or Dr. Carter or Dr. Harshfield, they pull out the big guns trying to make certain changes, it won't hold. It won't stick. You may see a little shift for a moment in time, but then you're going to revert right back. So that's why it is going to be very, very important for our health stewards to understand all of these various foundational pillars, not only in terms of the importance of these pillars, but how do you help somebody to rebuild those pillars? And then we're going to be teaching you how to go through a holistic cleanse and how to lead others in a holistic cleanse. We're also going to be dealing with what we refer to as eat to love. Eat to live optimally with vitality and elation. How to use food as not simply a matter of energy, but also how to use food therapeutically. How to use food to help people to create those shifts, those mental, emotional, physical shifts by manipulating the laboratory called your kitchen. The next part of the journey is teaching you so that you can teach others how to transform stress. Guess what? Stressors are a part of life. If you don't have stressors or stress in your life, guess what? You're dead. So the problem is not the events or the people or the places that cause different pokings in our life. The problem is our relationship or our response. So we're going to be learning different ways to respond to the various stressors in our life in a healthy manner. And we're also going to be talking about how do we optimize the pathways in the brain so that we have healthy thoughts, healthy emotions, and subsequently healthy behaviors. And then last but not least, we're going to be talking about how do you help people through the process of addressing various forms of trauma that may be, or not maybe, every one of us has some area of trauma in our lives to some degree. Because remember, it's not simply about the event that has occurred. It's about the relationship or the story that we tell ourselves with regards to those events. So that gives you an idea of the journey that we go through as a health steward in training. So now we get to this point where you may say, okay, so who is this for? And you're like looking behind you. Guess what? I'm looking right at you. This is for you. I'm talking to you. And in the words of the phenomenal president, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Ask not what Dr. Carter, Dr. Lewis, Dr. Harshfield, or what I can do for you. Ask what you can do for yourself. Ask what you can do for your family. Ask what you can do for your community. Because I'm going to tell you a little secret. The reality is that those of you who choose to join with us in becoming a health steward, you're really going to be in charge of the heavy lifting. You're going to be responsible for 80% of the work. 80% of the work with regards to helping people to transform their lives and to create a healthier, happier nation. 80% of the work is going to come from people like you who are going to guide people, empower people, build communities, and advocate and help other people to advocate for themselves. We need you now. We cannot do this by ourselves. There are only so many people that we can touch, so many lives that we can touch. And in reality, 80% of the people don't need us. They don't need high level, canon level type of approaches. They need you. They need someone who is in the community, who's going to look at them in the eye. They need you, someone who is in the community that is going to be there to hold their hand. They need you, someone in the community who is there, who can go to Walmart, go to these different places, show them how to shop, show them how to read the ingredients. They need you, someone in the community who's going to be there and say, you know what? If you need help, if your grandmother needs help in going into that doctor's office so that we make sure that grandma's needs are being fully advocated for, and I'm going to be there for you. They need you, the boots on the ground. They don't need me. They don't need Dr. Carter. They don't need Dr. Lewis. 80% of the people that are out there, they don't need us. They need you. So, next steps. Because remember what I said. This is not one of these fuzzy wuzzy little, educational things, and we kind of learn a little bit of information and then we kind of put it on the shelf like, oh, that's really neat. That's really interesting. Nah, buddy, I'm not going to let you off the hook that easily. So the next steps are this. If you want to learn more about what it means to be a health steward, you can use your little phone, get this little QR code, and that will take you to the page that tells you a little bit more about learning to be a health steward. And if you say, you know what, Michelle, I don't need to learn anymore. I want to book a chat with you so that I can get the details on this stuff. So that's the second QR code. And if you say, yo, Michelle, I don't even need to book a chat with you. I am there yesterday. I am ready to rock and roll. In that case, the third QR code is for you, which is to register. So some of you on this call have already spoken with me and you're ready to join us. And some of you on this call, this is the first time you're hearing this and you just want a little bit more detail. So, that's the code. But in any case, I'm going to open it up for questions. Oh, Lord, crickets.
Dr. Michelle.
Yes, sir.
Oh, my goodness. This is brilliant. And, I already suggested that we have a meeting at my place next summer to sort of maybe just consolidate the finality of the Health Steward program and, exchange information, learn from each other. And the other comment I have is you say 80% don't need us, myself, Dr. Carter, yourself, Dr. Harshfield. But 80% who do need us need a health steward too, to usher them along, because I have so many people that come to the program, and Jody can testify to this, is that with every program we offer, you get an hour worth of coaching. And what I recommend for folks is formulate the plan we put together in your own words, have Jody go over it with you and make sure you got it all right, but then also spend another session with her on just coaching, food, things of that nature. And corroborate what I'm saying, that only about 20% of the people take advantage of it, even though it's part of the program. It's in essence paid in advance. So, that we need people, bring people through better health choices regardless of their state, from the very well to the very sick. And there's no one excluded from this program, in my opinion.
Yeah. exactly. To just echo what you're saying, everyone that I work with has to go through this type of support later on if they
Yep.
want to actually have a change that sticks. Because I've seen it time and time again, like you said, where we will give the recommendations and most people like, okay, Michelle, got it. And then you call them back, a month or two later, and very, very small amount of people have the drive and have the wherewithal to be able to do it by themselves. And that's usually because
Let me,
there's
let me give
somebody
you
else.
let me give you two case studies. So one cancer lady who I highlighted on my blog on the ferritin iron ratio, called me up, and we did a lot of stuff. She did some chemo as well, and wrote back to me or called me and said, I owe my life to you. I'm cured. And I just had this inkling to call her late last year. I called her husband, and she had died.
Mm.
Okay, after being cured. To your point about that the child, and like particularly in cancer, but that's just sort of at the highest level of future risk. You can't stop at the end of it. This is a lifelong process.
Mhm.
And he's out of Illinois, who's been very outspoken. His bishop told him basically to censor himself, but he gets it. And I hadn't talked to him in, say, a year and a half, and he's on insulin, metformin, and Ozempic. Okay, and we have a great relationship, and he understands health. Yet he understands, yet somehow the system, the messaging from the system is so constant and so powerful that if we don't have at least 1/10 of their feedback and counteractive information, they're just going to slowly drift back in that way because it's just the way it is. It's just you hear something long enough and it suddenly becomes attractive or the standard narrative, and that's what the health stewards can help do. Help keep people just from, just like, oh, I could feel a lot better if, and just straying from the path. Anyway, I love what you're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that as well, because, at the end of the day, given all the recommendations that we do, but if you're not really following them on a consistent basis, yeah, the changes will not be lasting. And it's unfortunate. I think the vast majority of people kind of fall in that category. You know, they'll be all gung ho for a month or 2 months or 3 months. They might feel better. And then you really don't hear from them again. So until things then turn around and then they're feeling poorly again. And then you question them about, well, are you, still following the dietary guidelines? Are you exercising? Are you taking the supplements? Are you, detoxing? Are you, etc. And generally speaking, those things are not in place anymore.
Dr. Carter, and I'm not saying Michelle isn't this way. What I love about Dr. Michelle is she's a complete package in certain terms of understanding health, delivering, and having empathy for the clients and all that. But we proved extremely well, Michael, at Hillenbrand Industries that
Yep.
health is log linear, and many times, particularly the sicker you are, the longer it takes to sweep up that curve towards health. And at most people have a 3-month attention span,
Right.
at most, based on these fitness memberships and things like that. But what we've showed is that when you're really not under the chronic disease weather, it's 5 months minimum, and like you say, with brain, it's 2 years.
Yeah.
So this is where this program kicks in. And you may or may not recall, but there was one particular guy with the arthritis in his hands and the diabetes and the obesity. that we were calling him every week to stay with it. And even though he seemed to have no results, and then at 5 months, he literally turned the corner and went from a cripple to being able to use his hands.
Right, exactly.
And you know, and the strange thing is, Medicare runs this program. Of course, the health system corrupted it, just turned it into an ATM, but it's called chronic care management, CCM. And they pay you $32 for, a 5 to 20-minute phone call every month to check in with Mrs. Jones. And then they pay you $94 or something like that for a 1-hour visit every month to help Mrs. Jones through her quote unquote medications and all this other stuff. So Medicare, Dr. Harshfield, Medicare, even though we hate it, has a few programs in place that have been misused, of course, but were designed around this exact same Health Steward program. And Dr. Michelle, don't take offense that I'm relating what you're doing to Medicare, but at least they understand that we need continuity of care. So the chronic CCM, chronic care management. And so what we need to do is we need to institute it by people that aren't looking at Mrs. Jones as just a 5-minute phone call and a 5-minute note with a technician to make, bring more money into their clinical practice.
And the one thing to add to that is that this is going to be leveraging the power of community and groups. So it's one thing to have a one-on-one interaction with an individual. It's another thing to bring that person into a supportive group network where that person not only has the ability to learn from others, but also has the opportunity to teach others. Because being empowered is very, very important. Again, it's one thing to get information, and it's another thing to even apply it to your life, but it is far greater to be able to teach and help someone else. I've been an educator all of my life. I started out from I was a little girl. I was 15 years old. I was a camp counselor. I taught dance. And then later on, I became a professional educator in the school systems, both here in this country and abroad. And one of the things that I learned was that I am not the be all. And in fact, the students that I put in groups and showed them how to actually be a cohesive group, those were the students who excelled more in my classes than your independent person who may have been a math genius. And so that's what I'm emphasizing here. And the other point is that don't get this twisted. This is not about disease management. This is not about me checking or you checking, oh, did you take your supplements? Oh, did you take your medication? This is about empowering people to build health. Because it's one thing to be told, oh, well, take these supplements or take these medications. It's another thing for you to be able to say, okay, what are you doing in your life that is actually building health, where you are the one in control? Taking a supplement is passive. And yes, it has its place. Taking medication is passive. It has its place. But those things do not transform a person. Those things do not make a person a better person. If I teach you how to cook for yourself, if I teach you how to change your sleeping habits, those things will actually make you a better person. Those things will build health to the point where you don't need all kinds of interventions in subsequent years. And that's why I'm saying it's a difference between a health coach and a health steward. A health steward is focused on the whole person. A health steward is focused on the journey. A health steward is focused on creating an empowered person who's able to effect change in his or her community. You have the ability to do that in your community. You have the ability to do that in your family. I share with people in my book that all of my transformations in life have been because I wanted to be a better mother to my children. That is what started me on my health journey from day one. From day one, when I was 16 years old, I decided to learn natural family planning because I did not want to take birth control pills. I wanted to learn how to have a healthy body so that I could create a healthy child. And later on, every step in the way, when I decided to become a naturologist, it was because I wanted to be a better mother for my children. I had just had my fourth child, and I felt what I now can describe as postpartum depression. And I was afraid for the safety of my children because I was on that edge. And I went and I said, I need help. And at that time, I went to a psychiatrist because I thought I was losing my mind. And in less than 15 minutes, that psychiatrist gave me a prescription and diagnosed me as bipolar. And as I walked out of that door, I swear it was like the voice of God came to me and said, "This is not who you are, my child." And that was the point when I decided that I was going to do everything in my power to not only learn how to heal myself, but to learn how to teach other people. This system is making a travesty out of natural processes. You get sad. They say, oh, you're depressed. Let's put you on medication. You decide you want to have a baby. They say, oh, you know what? You're going to have to take all of these medications. You're going to have to jump through these hoops. You're going to have to induce your labor. They freak you out. So you get to the point where you have to have a C-section. This system is evil. And when I say evil, I mean it is contrary to life. In fact, evil is the word live spelled backwards. So what I am imploring for you guys today is, if you see what is happening, and if some of you are saying, you know what, I want to be part of the change. I want to join the team. I want to support Dr. Lewis. I want to support Dr. Harshfield. I want to support Dr. Gamble. And I want to support my family. I want to support my community. Then at the very least, book a chat with me and learn more. Because
Dr. Gamble, let me give you another example of how this has something for the individual who wants to become a health steward. So there's a kind of an expression that if you listen, you retain 5%. If you take notes, you retain 10%. If you teach, you retain 70%.
Mm-hmm.
And so a health steward is actually a teacher. And the Latin definition of doctor is teacher. So let me explain a little conversation that I explained to you yesterday between my oldest daughter and myself. And so she texts me and she goes, is NAD real, or is it just sort of a hoax or a fraud? And I said, well, NAD is part of the electron transport chain. It's extremely important. But she's saying, oh, no, supplementing NAD or whatever. And I'm saying, so here's an example where my bias steps in. I've listened to David Sinclair talk about it. I know he's a fraud because of their Sirtuin study that he did. They sold unreproducible research to GlaxoSmithKline for $750 million. So I have this this mind block when it comes to David Sinclair. And then when I'm just writing a text response to her, being challenged to actually think about this in a deeper way for the first time, I simply posed a question to my daughter. I said, would taking an NAD supplement increase the number of mitochondria inside your cells? Because we don't just have one, we have many. And then the next question came, and if not, what does? And of course, the answer to that question is physical exercise. So then she wrote back to me and said, aha, now I get it. Okay. I'm not saying an NAD supplement may not help someone with real mitochondrial dysfunction, but it ain't increasing mitochondria. And that's the number one thing you want. You want more cylinders in your engine, not one that's just using a better gasoline. And so the point is, if I hadn't been queried and challenged and forced to think about it and then respond back in a thoughtful way that could be convincing and teaching, I wouldn't have put the two and two together, which now I have much better ammunition against David Sinclair.
So we have a question. Someone says they really want to do it, but they want to get their own health together. And that's the beauty of this. This is something that you can use to get your own health together.
That's the point I just made, I hope. Yeah.
Well, I want to impress upon people, we're not looking for people with perfect health. You know, as the Bible says, that God will use the person that you think is the most unlikely. We want imperfect beings because we want you to have a personal health transformation so that when you turn around to teach others, you can do it from a position of knowing, really knowing that it's not something academic, you know, that you learned, oh, I learned this in a book. No, we're not interested in book people, okay? We're interested in real live people who are living this life. And that's why I say that this is a mentorship program that I usually charge people tens of thousands of dollars to do this, right? But I'm saying that we need to create a group of people that can go out and do this. And no, this is not for you to become a quote unquote volunteer. You know, now there is a part of it where I say that there are scholarships available. And with the scholarship, the requirement of the scholarship is that you make a commitment to being a community steward, which is that you're going to go out into your community, support others in your community. And I can explain all of that in detail in a one-on-one chat if you'd like. Or you can say, you know what, Michelle, not interested in the community issue, and that's okay. But guess what? You have another alternative. So there's that. And as I said, part of why we're doing this is because as we, meaning Dr. Carter, Dr. Harshfield, Dr. Lewis, and I, as we start to build this parallel health system, we need people that we can trust, that we know understand this way of approaching health and healing, that we can pass the baton to, that we can hire to be the support staff. But the only way to be a support staff is if you actually understand the system. And we want to take it further, that not only do you understand the system, but you are living the system. You have the testimony of being a product of the system. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. And of course, anybody who wants to get those QR codes can contact either you, Dr. Michelle, or Jody. Jody can find those as well.
I will send Jody the actual links that these QR codes link to. And in fact, I can put those links in the chat here. Hold on, let me stop this share so that I can get the actual links from my computer. Okay.
Michelle, where's Nikki? I want to see her.
Nikki is chilling. I'll have to do a phone with you. She's here laying down sleeping. She's like, Papa, leave me alone. You know how guys can be, always bothering us ladies. Jesus. Okay. So this that I'm putting in is the link to the details about the program. And then here we have the link to book a chat with me. And
Dr. Harshfield, do you want to land the plane and maybe tell the sad story about how we can't give good medicine to a 19-year-old cancer?
Well, let me tell a edited version. Who is IX or Roman numeral 9 that's talking about getting a knee replacement in a few weeks? We might be able to help you do something else, figure out where you are and so forth. There's a lot of things we can do. 5 to 10 years, we're not going to do knee replacements and stuff. But back to what Dr. Lewis is alluding to, a colleague from Texas who has to give lectures often and open them with, I'm not using my Texas medical license to teach today. I'm using my New Mexico license. And there was a patient that was treated at St. Jude's in Memphis, which is still using the same chemo and those ideas I used 40 years ago. And it's got a name, St. Jude's and so forth, that makes people think this is very progressive. But most of these places like that are archaic. They're fossilized. The problem, it's hard to get literature published in so-called peer-reviewed journals because peers, when presented something they've never heard of, reject it out of hand. So we are developing a second tier to the healthcare system. I think what we're going to see come down the pike is a single payer. Hopefully that'll be a national health insurance that'll be composed of all the federal money, which is about 60% now, and all the private Blue Cross Blue Shield money, which is about 40%. Throw all that into a company and call it a national health insurance. You'll have the watchdog of the government. It's also kind of slow, but then you'll have the entrepreneurship, 40% or so of Blue Cross Blue Shield, and at least we'll have a single payer. That will help for those of us that are not getting mammograms, not getting all these screening studies, not that they're all that great, but on average, a person's only with an insurance company 3.7 to 4.2 years. So if you're 35 years old, they don't care if you get your mammograms. In fact, they don't want you to because they'll have to pay for it. And you're going to get breast cancer in 30 years, so they don't care, you're someone else's problem. Until we are from grave to birth to grave on one program, we're not going to have that attentiveness to preventive care. So that's coming down the pipe. Now, here's the other thing. It is so centralized, healthcare is now, that it has to become decentralized. And we're seeing that now. Even a lot of the journals are starting to actually publish straight up clean articles that are not necessarily peer reviewed, but they are common sense. One of the, I think, most important things that we do, and Michelle does that, is that when folks see her face and those little eyes, they're better already. They're starting to get better. Your initial take is called a placebo effect. If you walk into a nice, clean doctor's office and they smile at you and talk to you, you're already getting ready to get better. And that's not nothing. And then when you are allowed to heal yourself, in other words, not be put on medications to mask your symptoms, and not only allowed to heal yourself, but you understand what the heck's going on because your healthcare providers are saying, hey, this is what's happening. Here's how you're going to get better. Now you have a plan, and the placebo effect works because A, the healthcare provider actually likes you. Look at that. She likes you. And number two, you like her. And number three, you get to choose. In other words, you don't have to get a knee replacement. Here's the alternative things, and you get to decide. That's the beauty, I think, the strength of what Michelle's talking about and what we're trying to do with our healthcare. And of course, I really like it because we don't hurt people anymore. Our complication rate's almost zero. Now, the worst thing happens, it doesn't work, which means, oops, I was trying to fix your little knee and I overlooked your thyroid deficiency. These stem cells don't work on their own. You've got to be well, your immune system, endocrine, all the prehab with the HRP folks. And like we said, half the people, once they get the prehab, their knee doesn't hurt anymore, whatever they came in for. So at any rate, not to be too wordy, Michelle, thank you for your soul and your smile. You're beautiful. And all these folks out there have permission to fix yourself and take care of your family like no one else can. No one else can. Thank you.
Um,
Excellent presentation. Excellent presentation.
all righty, guys. Thank you. Thank you. And hope to be chatting with some of you. All right.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see each other Wednesday night.
See you Wednesday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.